I'm Jason Klamm, and this is the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. Hi, everybody. It's Jason Klamm with the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. Today, I am honored to have on phone with me the wonderful, the delightful Katie Lee. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it weren't nothing, honey. I mean, I'm surprised that it came out of the blue, and it came out of the wealth of 100 years ago. It seems that I did this album.
Well, it's one of those. It's a situation where I'm always happy to discover that. If I see an album a million times in a record store and you see it enough and you forget to buy it. I saw specifically Songs of Couch and Consultation a million times, and I'm like, why have I not bought this finally? So I don't remember when I finally bought it, but and now that I'm listening to a comedy album all year, one every day.
No kidding.
Yeah, I've got about 500 of them to get through, but and all of March I'm listening to only women. Because it's Women's History Month, and this is a perfect time to talk with you about it. But I listened to it, and then to look up on your website, I mean, you're doing so much still that I figured, well, if there's anybody to talk to about this album, it's absolutely you. I know I kind of sent you a list of questions in order, but I kind of want to start with Songs of Couch and Consultation, if that's okay.
Oh, sure, fine.
So,
whatever you, I'll answer anything. It doesn't. Whatever you need to know that I know, anyway.
So, well, actually, I will step back. What's your experience with comedy? How far back does your experience with comedy go?
None. Absolutely none. No. This was the first comedy album I ever did, and I did it simply because, well, I'm a folk singer, and I've always been just a folk singer.
Uh-huh.
And played my own guitar and toured all over the place for many, many years. But the first album that ever came out was made by Specialty Records, Bud Freeman, and it's on that album now of the Songs of Couch and Consultation.
Uh-huh.
But Bud had already done a folk album of me, and they were going to do this comedy album, and for Specialty, I guess he was, but I forget names. And the guy that was going to do it, that they asked to do it, was the one I can't think of right now. I just can't think of his name.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, he refused. He said, sorry, but I only do my own material.
Okay, all right.
So he called me up. I was down in Miami at the time, I think. No, that was for the first time. Anyway, he called me up and he said, we'd like to have you go over some of this material and look at it and see if you'd like to sing it for us. And so I said, okay. And but I said, I'm not a musical comedy star, and that's what this is. And he said, well, just run a few lines for us, and let's see. Well, anyway, I started singing, and both he and Bud and here I go again, the guy who wrote the music.
Uh-huh.
They started laughing their heads off, and I said, what's so funny? And they said, oh, you are, because I was playing it straight.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely straight. I mean, the songs that are in there require a certain personality or they don't come off. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was being that person singing, because I'm an actress first and a singer second. And that's what I wish most singers were, and they are not.
Because the acting gives it personality, right? And helps you read the song better.
Well, of course. I mean, if you are just copying somebody else's singing of it, it's not going to be very damn good as far as I can see. You need to put your own self in that place and be that person.
And when you look at the album, I mean, each song has its own character, but it does have a kind of an overarching feel. So in your mind, were you singing it as this one character, or are you kind of a different character in each song?
I was a different character in every song.
And do you remember, did that just come right out of reading the lyrics, or did you sit and plan it out?
Came out of reading the lyrics. Of course. I mean, nothing else. I don't know these people. They didn't write about any particular person.
Sure.
No, I mean, Bud didn't. Bud did all the lyrics, and Leon Pober did. There, I thought of his name. Leon Pober did the music.
And well, then let's go back a little bit. What was your acting experience before you were a folk singer?
My acting experience was long before I was a folk singer.
Uh-huh.
I used to sing pop songs, with the local band in Tucson when I was in high school and college, and folk singing did not come into my life really until I went a few years before I went to Hollywood. It was in 48 when I learned to play the guitar, and then I started putting those songs to music. Before that, I used to just sing with the Cowboys.
And when you say sing with the Cowboys,
what?
You said sing with Cowboys.
Yeah, I used to just sit in the evening and on the benches or in the riverbeds and sing with the Cowboys. I lived on a ranch.
Yeah.
Or lived near a bunch of ranches, and I knew all the ranchers and went on roundup with them at times. But we would just, on the weekends, we just go out and hike or ride through the canyons and sit down in the evening around the campfire and sing.
This is just part of your life. That was just how you grew up, and was.
That's how I grew up.
So good.
And I always thought cowboy songs were corny as hell. You couldn't have made me sing those things when I went out in front and sang from a microphone in front of people. And then Burl Ives said to me one day, he said, "Why did you sing cowboy songs?" And I said, "Oh, they're so corny. They're not." He said, "Katie, they're folk songs, for Christ's sake." And I said, "Oh, they are?" Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, if you're so used to them, if that's what you grow up with, it's not hard to get tired of what you grow up with, I suppose.
Well, they just corny things for me at that time. And then once I learned they weren't, I got back into them again.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And so were you acting on stage, or did you do films? Did you anything like that I might have missed out on?
No, I was in theater. I grew up in Tucson, and I must have been in 25 different plays for the Tucson Little Theater. I graduated from the University of Arizona with a major in drama, a minor in English. And I was in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I was not singing then. I was singing, but my mother was a singer, and I always sang, not in public, but not until I got halfway through high school.
Yeah.
And I joined the high school quartet and sang with two or three girls, and then I don't know, it just sort of evolved as I went along. I kept singing a little bit more and acting a little bit less, but I just don't think you can really deliver a song unless you know about that song. And I used to research the songs, see who wrote them and why they wrote them, and get the really in-depth analysis from history and find out why is this song written, who wrote it, and what for.
I got to tell you, maybe this happens more than I'm used to, but I'm pretty ignorant of music. I've never heard anybody give me that kind of a story about, but just preparing I want to say just for singing a song, but preparing for singing a song and doing it the best way possible. That sounds unusual. Is it unusual?
Well, the way I hear people singing is pretty unusual. I mean, First of all, I can't understand the words because they don't know how to pronounce. Or I went through that as a singer. I learned how to sing my words so you could understand what I was saying or singing. And most singers haven't a clue. I took that as part of my drama course, a speech course. You have to take that if you're in the drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and I applied that to my singing. Naturally, I would do that.
As a young woman, did you have any experience with radio? Like, what was your first exposure to getting out there besides being on stage?
I don't remember, doing any radio stuff in Tucson when I was there. It all started out in Hollywood when I went there in '48. I went out to do a play at the Pasadena. The director called me, who had been a director at the Tucson Little Theater. She called me to come and sing a leading role or play a leading role in at the Pasadena Playhouse, which was a big spot for beginning actors and at that time. And Gilmore Brown was the director of the school, and I had this leading part. And from there, I just slowly moved into. I did a lot of drama spots all over Hollywood in different little theaters. That's where you're supposed to be spotted for the movies.
Sure.
And somebody picked up on it, and I began to be on NBC with the Gildersleeve. I was on that show as a running part. I was on another show with Ronald Coleman. Called I keep forgetting the name. I was on the Roy Rogers show. I was.
Wow.
All this is NBC. I didn't do. I can't remember doing anything at CBS.
And was it a matter of you knew the people at NBC? It wasn't a contract thing. It just
they knew
worked
me.
Out?
They
knew
became, you. One show goes. All that they're all interconnected, and they'll see me an actor or somebody they like on one show, and then propose that they come on and do another part in another show. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
So I was there with Gildersleeve and Halls of Ivy, and Gordon Gray found out that I could sing really good, and so he put me on his summer show, The Railroad Hour, and that's how it happened. Here's another one.
Yeah. Well, was there? Did you have? You're a young lady. What was the idea of being like? Being in front of all those people so soon. I don't know. It just.
Well, I can remember the first rehearsal I had at the Gildersleeve show, and they would invite the public into the studio. That's the way they did those shows in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole orchestra on the stage, and here I am sitting on this high stool, and this great big orchestra on my right, and I've rehearsed this, but I'm scared to death.
Sure.
Jesus. When they first rehearsed me, I said, I said, I'm so interested in your music, I can't play my own. I just couldn't get it together. There was just too much going on, and it was the first time I had ever sat down and had an orchestra play the song with me.
Wow. Oh, that would be intimidating, I would imagine. I can't imagine that.
Well, I couldn't imagine it either, but I certainly do remember just being petrified. And then I relaxed for the actual show.
Mm-hmm.
My training in theater finally got through to me. And once you know you have to do it right, you do it right.
Yeah. Because, I guess people might forget, but everything was live. You had no choice.
Everything was live. My first acting spot on radio was live. It was called Armchair Detective. And you had to trip over cables. You had to do all kinds of things and just keep right on going, honey.
Oh, my God. Wow. So, wow, that's crazy. So you're in Hollywood. you're doing radio stuff. Did that turn into TV stuff too?
This turn into what?
Did it turn into television as well? Did you end up doing television?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
From there, I was on the first. Helen Parrish had a show, the first television show that NBC. They did it with her about folk music, and I was the folk director on that.
Wow.
Show. And
Okay.
I called in my friends and people that I knew could sing and play and do a fair acting job, and I don't know how many shows I did of that. Helen with Helen,
Mm-hmm.
but that was the first television show that I can remember doing.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
now, have you? Man, now I have to wonder if any of those shows exist, because I know a lot of those were either lost or
I
never
just
recorded.
got a note from a guy who heard the Guild. He's found me, and he writes to me about twice a year. And I just saw one this afternoon for just as a big surprise. He wanted to know if the song "Remember Me," if I had ever recorded it. And it was a song by Terry Gilkyson, who was famous for his song "The Cry of the Wild Goose," which really hit the charts way back then in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I answered him. I said, I have sung it, and I've recorded it with Terry. But I don't know that there's any recording of me out there alone, singing it alone, though I used to sing it in all my concerts and all my performances.
Uh-huh.
Live performances. I'm not talking radio now.
Sure. Now, is this somebody who's kind of keeping track of all your performances in general, like kind of archiving your stuff?
No, I don't. I think he's just a Gildersleeve fan.
Oh, a Gildersleeve fan. Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't write that. He doesn't write that much, and neither do I. And I've trashed most of it anyhow, and
Sure.
I don't remember.
I would love to see any time you performed on. I mean, I think I can probably hunt down the radio stuff, but the TV stuff I would love to see, even if you weren't on air necessarily. I just love that. That it was a woman in charge of that you were there. What was the title again? The folk what?
The folk director.
Folk director.
Music
Okay.
director.
All right. And that's so good. I mean, at that.
I don't know that it was. Well, I don't know how they publicized that, or even if they did.
Sure.
I just don't remember.
But it's important nonetheless, and I think that's so. They knew your knowledge of folk music was known that early.
Yes, it was.
That's amazing.
That was probably through Gildersleeve,
Mm-hmm.
or not Gildersleeve, through Gordy McRae,
Mm-hmm.
and because he being the singer, and also Gordy came out to do Oklahoma in a valley not far from Tucson, and I remember going out on the set and having a great time with him one afternoon. We just spent the whole afternoon in that fake cornfield, and no, I wasn't in that show. That was a movie, Oklahoma, and he was the star of that show.
Now, did you, going back that far, did you perform with any of what we might consider the better known, like some other better known folk acts? Like, I mean, I don't know a lot about folk music, so the only thing that's going to pop into my head is Pete Seeger. But I'm just curious.
Well, I knew Pete very well, and Ronnie Gilbert and the Weavers and all those people. They were friends, but I didn't perform with the Weavers. I performed once or twice with Gail. With Burl Ives. I performed with Josh White. I had performed with Harry Belafonte.
Wow.
I have performed with, let's see, who else? I can't think right now. Who else? Can't think.
Yeah. I had a feeling those were the circles you would have flown in, but
those are all my contemporaries.
Sure.
I knew all those people. We were all doing the same clubs.
Mm-hmm.
They were not clubs. They were, coffee houses then.
Sure.
And then they turned into little bistros, and then finally they were just nightclubs.
Right. What's blowing my mind, I think, is just your ability to adapt, and it's just to go from folk music and then to just so easily, seemingly, to it probably wasn't easy, but it seems easy for you to do comedy.
It was easy,
You
but
know.
it drove managers crazy. They never knew what the hell to do with me. I mean, I could do so many things that they didn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to find some booker that knew, what to do. Like, I opened the Gate of Horn in Chicago, and I had been called in there to do that by the owner, and that was the folk club in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't play in the folk places in New York. By the time I got to New York, I was still singing folk songs, but I was singing them in the big top high clubs. So like, I was in Julius Monk's upstairs at the downstairs.
Uh-huh.
I was in the Blue Angel. I was in there for 2 weeks. Burl came. He was there at the time, and I said, "Burl, something's wrong with my performance. I need you to come in and tell me what the hell's wrong." Because I said, it's just not working out the way I want it to. I'm not getting the response I want. So I went home to the Hay and Helen's apartment that night and sat in front of the fire on the rug, and he just laid me out and said, "Look, you're singing too fast. What's your fucking hurry, lady?" He says, "Take it easy. Why are you in such a hurry?" I said, "I'm not in a hurry. I'm singing like always." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "Slow down. Think what you're saying. Go back to the old days. You got an audience out there." He said, "Relax, baby." He said, "You're all uptight." And I said, "Well, it's a big club. It's very famous."
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because even if it's a fast song, you still have to be pretty deliberate with your words and make sure it's all coming across. Right? I mean,
Right.
you might forget that. I can see that, especially if you're nervous. Yeah, wow.
Well, I guess I was just plain nervous. I mean, it was a big place for a little folk singer like me to be in the
Yeah.
first place. And I guess my agent probably thought so too, but he said, "Well, here's a vacant spot. Let's fill it." I don't know.
You know, I think what's kind of that is something that I'm not going to completely understand, and maybe you can give me a picture of. I'm used to, like, the comedy that I normally talk about. These are guys and ladies that started performing in clubs that were transitioning from folk clubs to comedy clubs.
Okay, here they are.
Yes.
Irwin Corey, Professor Irwin
Yeah,
Corey.
sure.
The greatest comedian in the world
Yeah.
ever to this day. Stan Freberg, another one. Absolutely cool. Lord Buckley, another one.
Oh, yeah.
These were the great guys of my era,
Yeah.
my day. And I listened to them, and I performed with Irwin more than once
Really?
at a club in Miami, and I can't remember the name. It was some big guy's name. And I used to come out from behind the stage and get in the audience and watch Irwin. He just drove me crazy. I laughed so hard I would just double over. And I'd laugh because he had yet to say a word.
Uh-huh.
When he'd come out on stage, he did this almost 15 minutes of miming. And it was so funny and so incredibly right on and the audiences, of course, they were just in stitches.
Yeah. Now
so
these.
he was definitely my. And then along came Mike Nichols and Elaine May.
Sure.
And I just loved their albums, but I never actually saw them perform.
Oh, I would have loved to see that. I have one of theirs on my wall. That's one of those that I keep up as a reminder.
Yeah, they were great.
Phenomenal. Now these clubs, though. You're talking about in these clubs, though. These are folk clubs, but comedians are coming into kind of your territory, right?
Yeah, I mean they would. That was about the time I started singing calypso because Harry had taught me how to do that.
Uh-huh.
And but the comedians and the comic acts, they were thrown in with calypso and with folk and it was just all a huge mishmash.
Yeah.
About that time. We're talking the late 50s, early 60s before late 60s, early, I don't know.
No, yeah, right.
I'm too old to remember how
Yeah,
many years have gone by.
I mean, late 50s, early 60s makes sense because that's when all these acts that I'm more familiar with in terms of comedy. Because I don't
Well,
know,
that's it then.
I don't know my ass from my elbow when it comes to folk, unfortunately. But when it comes to comedy, I've got an idea. And like the guys that I'm used to, like the Smothers Brothers, were guys who were mixing like goofy folk music with a really great comedy.
Yeah.
And so those are the guys I'm kind of used to as almost
That's
an official
exactly
transition.
right. Like the folk clubs, nearly all of them had a really good comic along with them.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember those guys' names, but I do remember them being on the bill with me and vice versa.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Did you yourself do, as a folk singer, were you doing any songs that were strictly comedy or maybe a little funny? I'm curious, like, what kind of stuff was coming up?
I was doing, funny songs, but they were all folk tunes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's stuff like the English folk songs. Some of those were pretty hot and heavy.
Uh-huh.
They were, like spicy songs for cool nights. K-N-I-G-H-T-S.
Right.
And it was that was practically nearly all that album was funny or
Yeah.
intriguing or something. Yeah, it wasn't a serious album.
Mm-hmm.
Not by a long shot, no.
Now, is that when you're performing and when you were performing, is that do you care if it's serious? I mean, what's your goal when you're performing folk music?
My goal is what, dear?
When you're performing folk music, other than I'm going to perform songs today, do you have another goal? Is it education? Is it awareness? Is there something else that I might miss
Oh, wow. Well, now you're hitting on the reason that I'm still around here and still fighting.
Uh-huh.
I started writing protest songs.
Yes.
When I hit the river and the river hit me, then I became an entirely different performer, an entirely different person, and if it hadn't been for it, that river saved my life, or I'd still be probably eking out an existence as an old lady in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But it took me out of that town, and I never went back.
Now, you give me a little more detail. Explain, because you know what? I'm honestly, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to admit a bias that is unfortunate. But when I think of folk singers and I think of I'm a late comer to your work, and I don't think that's any mistake based on the fact that you're a woman and I was less exposed to you.
No,
and that I it's not, while it's not my fault, but I think I was less exposed to you because I was less exposed to you, and I that makes me unhappy, but I like that.
I still kept singing folk songs, but they were folk songs about the Colorado River.
Yes.
And the fact that they were going to build a dam and kill my river and everything that I loved about that and the entire Southwest they were messing with. And I just, I just did an absolute flip and quit doing any kind of pop singing. I just started in gung-ho with my songs about the river, and I went all around the country singing those songs in my shows and showing movies. I would go to women's clubs and show movies of this beautiful river and try to get people to come and run the river so they'd understand that they're not supposed to be damned, and that was the rest of my life. That's it, Jason. That just turned me completely around.
Because you wanted to save a part of America that people weren't paying attention to. That's
right. And then I started to think, well, I don't want all those folks out here. And began to realize that I was tooting a horn a little bit too loud. I didn't want everybody in the East coming out here and filling up the spaces.
Sure.
You realize those things, way down the line. You don't think of it at first. You just I want to save it. I want to save it. In order to save it, you have to have people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and do you still kind of feel like you're a knight standing at the drawbridge there, just making sure that
I'd never quit.
Yeah.
I get 2, 3, and 4 letters or notes on my computer every week. Somebody wants to know how I did this or how I did that, and how can they do the thing to help. and that happens every time. I'm now some sort of oracle, and they think I can give them the answer. Well, of course, I can't give them the answer. I just have to tell them to be true to themselves, follow their heart, and fight.
Yeah. But how? Okay, so this is I think where maybe modern artists are missing out or missing the point a little bit, because at least for me, I know that I'm very conflicted when it comes to political issues. I like to do political satire, but then the question is me just doing satire enough? Is me putting my art out there enough? I want to know what you combined your art with to make a difference. Like what how did it work for you?
I started singing everywhere I could about the river, telling people about it. Then I became a writer. I've written 4 books,
Mm-hmm.
and those books got out, and they were written off of my journals, which told what happened every day down there on that river and what I saw, and why it needed, not to be drowned under 700 feet of murky water, and that our rivers are the lifeblood of our planet, and if you cut your veins, you're going to bleed to death, and that's what's going to happen to this planet if we don't quit damming our rivers.
Yeah. Wow. And what's great is you make it sound so simple. You make it,
It's simple, except that we're under political, what do I want to say, like we're in a shredder.
Uh-huh.
Because they come in and mess up everything, and they don't give a flying fart about anything except their political thoughts or their regime or whatever. And I was so apolitical when I went out into this world to sing and do my thing that I was just astounded. I had no clues. I didn't know nothing about politics or give a flying fart. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because I was totally ignorant.
Sure.
And then when I began to see the world and what it was doing to itself through us, I said, this has got to slow down, or we're in deep doo-doo.
I just love though that you got to discover. You're right there with a lot of other people discovering the power of folk music, not just reliving old folk music, but you get the chance to use it. That's amazing.
Well, it tells, that's what folk music is, Jason. It
Yeah.
tells a story. And that story had to be written by somebody who really cared to say something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these people, they didn't know how to write a tune, and so they stick it to somebody else's tune.
Sure.
That's what the basics of folk music is all about. They just write a poem and think, well, I'd like to be able to sing this, and maybe because I learned long ago that a politician will listen to a song long before he'll listen to my angry tirade about what he's doing wrong.
Sure.
Yeah, they'll listen.
Your job is
And they'll listen if it's funny or has a funny angle to it or has a very, crazy rhyming. They do. That's what songs do. That's what music's for.
It's amazing the power to make something palatable just by making it stick in your head.
That's right. And you make it stick in your head with a rhythm and a rhyme and a tune a lot faster than you will with it written out here on the page. Boring it to death.
I'm regretting, and I have regretted that I haven't heard Spicy Songs for Cool Nights yet. I'm going to pick it up. I'd like to get these things on vinyl if I can. I don't know how easy that's going to be for me to find.
Spicy Songs for Cool Nights is now on the Songs of Couch and Consultation album, along with the other album that Victor made right after Songs. When they found out Songs of CNC was so popular, they called me in and asked me to do another Psycho album for them, Victor Records.
Yeah.
And they called that one Life is Just a Bed of Neuroses.
It's perfect.
And it's on it's on the CD with Songs of Couch and Consultation, and half of spicy songs for cool nights.
I'm gonna have to pick that up then. I'm gonna have to.
Well,
to
you're
get
not going to pick it up. You can get only way you're probably going to get it is through me.
Well, I'll have to get it through you then.
That's why I wrote Dick or Doug, I can't remember his name now. I wrote him to find out if you would send. Did you get that motorcycle?
I didn't hear it, luckily.
Woo! Good. I wish I did. Anyway, I that's why I wrote him and asked him if he would send me some more. And, yeah, he will.
Maybe you need to write some folk songs about motorcycle noise, and maybe that'll fix the problem.
Oh, God, don't I wish. They can't hear. Half of them can't read. That's all right. Never mind. They are the low totem on my pole. The lowest of the low totem. I've always wanted, it is some piano wire straight across the street, except I'd have to pick up all those heads. But it's a great thing to just envision.
You might be the strongest personality I've ever interviewed on this podcast. It makes me so happy. Okay, so I want to ask you about let's get to the album that I have heard. Damn my ignorance, but I have heard it. Songs of Couch and Consultation. What was it like recording that? Like, how quick was it? Did you have any input on it?
It was done in 2 sessions, and it was done with all the finest musicians in Hollywood, all of whom were under contract to another company, but they also, since their names are not mentioned on the album, they could play on anything they wanted. That's how they made their living.
Ah, okay.
And there was Joe Finger's Car is on piano.
Mm-hmm.
And and Shelly Manne is on drums.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also on water bottles.
Really?
Yeah, he went next door and filled up a bunch of several water jug bottles, and then took his drumsticks and made different tunes because they were filled at different levels.
That's perfect.
And that's on the album there somewhere.
Oh, that's so good.
And there was I don't know. I just can't. Joe Fingers Cousins. Red Callender and Red Mitchell, both bass players, they were on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just pop up anymore.
Sure.
Maybe when you and I hang up, I'll think of all those
Of
things.
course. Well, that's what's gonna happen. That's okay. Boy. So were the songs? I'm assuming they were just written out. You sang them as is and or did you have any input on how they were performed or anything?
No, I'm a folk singer. I couldn't read a note of music if I tried.
Okay.
All I have to do is hear it, and then I'll put the chord to it, and it'll be right or wrong. If it's wrong, somebody will tell me, or I'll find out. And if it's right, I'll just leave it alone. But all I had to do was hear the melodies, and Leon would play them for me, and I'd practice with him on the piano, and that's all that was necessary.
Yeah.
That's how I learned the tunes.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that would be. I mean, I'm no you, but that's how I'd have to learn it too. I do understand that. Are you okay? So I'm assuming that is you on the cover of the original version.
Yes, it is.
It is. Now, what about the other
not
two?
Not when Reprise took it over. They tried to copy the idea, and it's a horrible cover.
It's not a good cover. No, I've seen 2 more. I've seen
but
2 other copies.
On the original cover. Yeah.
I thought
and that's
so.
on the on the CD that's got the other 2 albums on it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I had wondered because there are 2.
Well, it's there, and there's a nice little booklet in there that the guys in Australia put into this new CD, and it's a nice album, really.
Well, I want to make sure that
I'm not
people
really
pick
trying
it
to
up.
sell it. He's only to send me a dozen of them.
Right.
I'm going to have to get more.
I want to make sure people do pick it up, so we'll make sure to advertise the heck out of it at the end.
Well, it's on my CD. I mean, on my website. That's the only place they're going to find it.
Well, yeah, let's make sure people know what it is, which is katydudit.com, which is KATY DOODIT.com. And you can find so much information about you, actually. There's so much great stuff.
Oh yeah, my everything is on there. All my nudes. No, excuse me. all my beautiful river pictures. No, very few of my beautiful river pictures.
Uh-huh. Now what's your performing and writing life like now? What are you doing now?
Well, honest to God, Jason, I do not understand some things. I'm 97 years old.
Uh-huh.
I wrote a folk opera back in 1953. I was still going in and out of Hollywood,
Uh-huh.
partly on the road, had a new manager, and I was doing songs elsewhere, and my base was in Chicago, where my manager was, and I've lost my train of thought. What was I starting to say?
Oh, I was just asking you where what you're doing now, and you wrote a folk opera.
Oh, now, well, I read this story in the Saturday Evening Post. There's a little short story called "The Rider on the Pale Horse" or "The Rider on the Pale Stallion." I read, and it just after the first paragraph, which the woman had written it, Helen Eustace wrote it, and it was in rhyme, and I don't think she even knew it.
Uh-huh.
And it just screamed to have music to it. Well, by the time I had finished this short story, a couple of pages in the Saturday Evening Post, I had already heard music all the way through it, and I just started writing it. I started writing the music,
Wow.
and I took the original story, cut it out, and took it with me. And wherever I was driving, I'd read part of it, and maybe I'd hum a tune with it. And it just developed and evolved. And by the time I got to New York, I was working at the Blue Angel, and Helen was living at West End Avenue, and I went down. I hadn't even finished it, and I played part of it for her. And she said, "Well, that's the best treatment I've ever heard of my story." And she said, "I've heard some pretty horrible ones." And she was talking about a television short they'd made of it with another title.
Uh-huh.
And her original title was Mr. Death and the Red-Headed Woman.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the Post didn't want to put Mr. Death in their title, so they called it something else. And I don't know what they called it. Eve Marie Saint played the part of Maud Applegate in the television short, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. She'd heard. Oh yeah, and the Martin Gower Champion wanted to use my music, and they wanted to do some sort of a movie. I don't know. I think they ended up dancing it or something. And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind using my music. How much do I get?" They didn't want me. They didn't want to pay me for it. I
Of
said, "Well,
course.
drop dead, honey." Sorry. Nope, you cannot. My music is copywritten, and my lyrics are copywritten, and the story is copywritten. I'm afraid no.
Yeah. You must have learned your lesson early. It sounds like. I mean, did you ever happen to have any unfortunate situations with your own work where somebody got away with taking it, or you just knew better?
Oh, it's minor. There's somebody right here close by who just flat stole a melody off of me that I wrote to a very, very old cowboy song, Western song. And I just let it go and said, "Well, you make amends on if you print this again." And I don't know. It's not worth it to bother them.
Sure.
Let them. I don't care.
But but the folk opera though, is it something that you've got? Is it ready to? Is it something you're gonna have put on?
Well, it's being performed for the first time in history, as far as I know, with live people on stage. I don't think it's been performed on stage anywhere.
Wow.
If it has, I don't know about it. And it doesn't matter. I mean, that's fine. If somebody else wants to do another treatment, just so long as it's not my music and or my lyrics. And the way I've told the story is to stay right with the author and not deviate at all from her story.
Sure.
Her story is just exactly like it was when she wrote it. But like I said, I've added lyrics, and I put a folk song, a well-known folk song, right in the middle. They do a little jig at one night, and that's a well-known folk tune. It's PD. There's nothing anybody can. They just can't use my lyrics.
Right, right. Now, where's it being performed?
It's being performed here in Cottonwood, Arizona, on the 6th of May at 7:30 at the at the Mingus Union High School in Cottonwood, Arizona.
That's exciting.
May 6th.
That's
and
exciting.
There's only one performance at 7:30, and I wouldn't be surprised there'd be more damn famous people in the audience than there will be on the stage. But there's some very good performers and people who have done many albums. Peter McLaughlin, who is a national flat-picking champion of the world, is also in the production. Kathleen Williamson, who has about 4 albums out. She's a singer and a lawyer and a judge and a performer. And we have a great director who started the Blue Rose Theater over in Prescott, Arizona, and she is our director, and she's playing one of the parts too. She's playing Billy Be Damn Bang Tree.
It's a great name.
It's a great story, and it's got 3 very big people who've given us words on the poster. One is Arlo Guthrie. The other one is Tom Russell. Another great singer, performer, many, many, many albums. And I think Ranger Doug Green of the Riders in the Sky.
Really?
Said a nice thing about me one time. He said, "She's still a bombshell."
You know,
that's the old cowboy bunch. I used to be on stage with those guys every now and then. It was so fun.
You paint a new picture
I
of...
had a great life, dear.
It seems like it. It seems obvious.
Believe me, there aren't many who've had this good a life.
Well, that seems very obvious, and it also seems that you've done a lot with it. And it's honestly, I feel honored as a lover of comedy that you even bothered to dip your toe in comedy, because you didn't have to, and it's...
What do you mean I didn't have to?
Yeah.
I mean, I love comedy. I just don't deal with it anymore.
Right, but you didn't. You
part
just
of life back then.
You're so powerful in all these other arenas. You didn't have to, but the fact that you did and you made comedy better for it. I mean, this songs of Couch and Consultation alone, like, it stands out so much to me that that they just let you sing like a woman, that they let you be a woman and not a girl. That could have happened. That album could have really been sexist, and it's not a sexist album.
That was a strange thing that you said. I didn't quite understand what you meant, and then I got to thinking about it, and I'm not a girl because I'm 20 different girls on that album.
Sure.
I mean, 20 different women on that album.
And that's just it. They could have... Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm trying to remember some of the notes that Bud was a very funny man, Bud Freeman, and a very smart man. And he made some wonderful comments on the original album about the singing of that one of the songs about it's Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald going down together in the Caspian Sea. And so I tried to make it sound like that. Or I made it sound like that, and that was his comment about it.
It's a delight, and it's wonderful to listen to. And I just think that it could have gone one way, but the fact that you had a good team and had you there, it's
Hey,
an
it was
album that
on
still
the
holds up.
charts for several weeks.
Right. Yeah,
It
and
was.
it holds up. I think. I mean, people have to understand how how prevalent psychobabble was, and that it was a relatively new thing in pop
The only
culture.
reason it won't hold up, dear, is because the gene pool has sunk so far below sea level that half these people don't even know what's funny.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong at all. I could go a little further, but I guess I'll miss it.
You know what? You've got standards and you stick to them. I admire the hell out of that. I gotta say. Uh, you know what? I want to go back a little bit before I let you go and just talk about if you.
Hey, this is almost a whole hour.
I know, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. I promise. We'll get done with you soon here. But do you remember what the first comedy album you might have heard as a kid would have been?
First comedy album. I don't remember, dear. It could have been Stan Freberg, maybe, or no. It certainly wasn't Irwin. I met him in nightclubs. I met Irwin, and he became, not a close friend, but definitely a friend. And he performed down here at the Playboy Club, and here in Phoenix he did, and I of course saw him in the original Playboy Club because I worked there in the library, and I think Irwin was up there once too, not with me, but he was in the club at the same time in one of the rooms. I remember that.
And where was that club located? Which one is this?
The one in New York.
In New York.
Original.
Okay. And you worked there?
Oh yes.
Really? What doing?
I worked in the library.
Doing what? Like, how did that? I'm just
Singing
curious.
folk songs, dear.
Oh, that's so
All
good.
dressed up in gold lame.
Mm-hmm.
I did not sing. I mean, I did not dress or do anything like the dirty sandal folk singers of that era.
Uh-huh.
I dressed beautifully. I made half of my own clothes.
Wow.
I had big sparkling skirts and stuff like that. I was not dressed like other folk singers, believe me, in rags.
What was the reason for that? Was that's just who you were, or were you trying to stand
That's
out?
just who I was.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. No, I just did not. I don't know. That's just the way it was.
Yeah. Well,
I
mean,
was a performer on stage. We always had costumes, and so I had a costume.
were you now? I mean, so the making of your own clothes, is that just something you grew up doing too? I would imagine. I mean,
Yes. My mom taught me how to sew. In fact, in my T-Bird, I carried two huge things. One was the I can't remember, concertone recorder with the 10-inch reels, one of the state-of-the-art concert recorders of the time, and a little Singer sewing machine. And when I worked in a club, I'd have the whole day to myself, go to work at 9 o'clock, come home at 2, go to work at 2 o'clock, and whatever.
Wow.
And I'd sew if I wanted. I had nothing else to do all day long.
Were you recording your own stuff? Were you just, I have an idea for a song, I'm going to record it? Or what were you doing with, like, what was the...
I kept it with me because there was a time there during the Calypso era where I used it for something. I can't even recall now what that was, but it was the reason I carried it with me. Also, I practiced with it and learned what not to do with the song.
Okay.
I'd hear myself singing, and I remember Josh telling me one time. He said, "Quit looking at your hand, baby. Don't look at your hand." And I said, "Okay, well, don't look at my hand, okay." And then he came over to the apartment one day and was teaching me some licks on the guitar, and I was again looked at my hand. He said, "Go in a closet and practice." So I did. I went in, shut the door, and practiced.
So you couldn't see your own hands, and that's the way to do it. That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, do any of those old reels still exist? That's
No.
Oh, damn it. Oh.
Well, yes, there is one on my website. It's called Folk Songs of the 50s.
Okay. And so that's
Something like
got that stuff on it. Okay, that's got some of your stuff from that time. That's great.
It's folk songs of the 50s. It's got some of those funny ones and little short ones and what I call the little willies. Willie fell down or something. I can't remember all of it now.
Well, I'm gonna have to give any of these things that I can a listen, and I recommend anybody listen to your music and just follow your career, follow you as a person. You're just you've done so much that I think you deservedly need to be looked up to, and people need to be paying attention to the work you've done and the work you're still doing.
Well, I certainly can't last forever. I think it's about time that, I spread my wings and flew away, but that doesn't seem to be the way they want it. Whoever they are.
Whoever they are. Well, this has been so damned fascinating, and I have a million more questions, but I'm going to let you go. But I really appreciate this.
We can do another one some other time, Jason.
Let's do it. My
that ear is bending off.
Well, Katie, thank you again. Everybody, please go to katiedoodit.com. That's, again, KATYDOODIT.com. And check that out. Everything you need is there. It's all there. And
there.
And it's been an honor to talk to you. Genuinely an honor. I appreciate
this. You're a pretty damn good interviewer, my dear.
Well, thank you.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, I mean, we've got, I'll stop kissing your butt in a second, but we've got an American hero on the line, and I appreciate it. I thank you for taking the time with me.
Thank you, dear. Bye-bye for everybody.
Thank you guys for listening, and as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of Stolen Dress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Worden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klamm. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. Please visit stolendress.com to listen to our other podcasts, read our blogs, read our tweets, watch our videos, and read our books. Please subscribe on iTunes, and if you like us, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. You can find us on Facebook.com/ComedyOnVinyl, Twitter @ComedyOnVinyl, and find everything else at ComedyOnVinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit StandUpRecords.com for all your comedy needs and tune into the new Stand Up channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast.